Hi, Markus. Great that you were able to make the time for this call. I know you've been helping multiple retailers to find the right pricing tool for their specific situation and context. I'm really curious to hear how you do that. How do you assess the different pricing solutions on the market?
Thank you, Fabian, for your invitation and for your interest in selecting the right pricing software. I'm happy to share how I do it. Should I start right now?
Let's dive into it.
Perfect. I would like to share two parts of the secret sauce. First, what are the criteria and dimensions to evaluate pricing software and the methodology how to do it. If you want to evaluate a pricing software, we first start with the high-level dimensions. What is important to make a decision about the pricing software? And the first one are, of course, the business criteria. How is the pricing software able to solve my business needs? This is the content. Are the functions and functionalities that pricing software should deliver. The second piece is, of course, the software. How does this software fit into my infrastructure, in my architecture? And what are the technical performance criteria that describe this pricing software? The third part is the financial criteria. How much does it cost? How much does it save? What is the business case of implementing this pricing software? A fourth one, an important one, is what is the provider? What are we dealing with? And what kind of experience does the provider bring to the table? And lastly, the implementation risk. At the end, pricing software is an implementation project. It's not 100% plug and play, it's a project. And the question here is, what is the implementation risk? How risky is it to implement it by a certain date? Do we have the resources and so on? So these are the high-level categories.
I think those 5 categories make a lot of sense. I can very well see retailers, especially looking at the financial criteria of the whole project, of the outcome. Can you elaborate a bit more? What are the criteria behind those categories?
Yes, I can do. So once we define the categories and we are very sure that they cover all important dimensions, to evaluate those dimensions, we need to have criteria, very concrete points by which we can conclude on the performance of the underlying dimensions. For example, on the business criteria, we can define a full list of functional requirements and check off whether the pricing software can perform these tasks. Or second, we can define use cases that we think are very important and very unique to our company, and to see in, for example, live demonstrations, how they are solved.
I guess this is probably very specific stuff, right? How they do their pricing, what special product relationships or channel complexities they have to cater.
Yes, you are 100% right. So we cannot take a shopping list or checklist and go into this project. We have a discovery phase at the beginning to see what is important. And that also explains why there is no single pricing software on this market, like a winner takes it all. Each company has their own specific unique characteristics so that there is a best fitting pricing software out there. Then we, of course, have the technical criteria. That's a summary of completely different criteria ranging from data security to architectural fit to scalability to SLAs and what is the liability insurance. And so very, very much many technical and actually non-functional criteria.
And I guess that these probably are also very, let's say, the relevance and the complexities depends a lot on the company size of the retailer, I would assume.
Yes, you can have a very small online shop versus an international multi-channel company across the globe. And of course, they have 100% different criteria also on the technical part. So then you have the financial criteria, and this is not only what are the annual license fees and the cost for the implementation project, but also sometimes it's important to know how long does it take to pay back the whole project, or how to finance the whole project, the financing model. Sometimes you can put it on the balance sheet. Sometimes you can use it as expenditure for the given year. It depends what is important for you. And also here, it depends on the company structure, the liquidity, and many other criteria.
I guess the challenge probably here is especially in the make or buy decision, that people don't forget the cost of make, also in the long run, to maintain and continuously improve and adapt the software solution if it's built in-house, right?
Yes, you're right. And also the opportunity cost. So if you have a development team that creates a pricing software, at the same time, it does not create something else. So what is the value add of this something else that you are losing out right now? And this has to get into this as well, given that development capacity is limited. Yes, you have to look into the opportunity costs. Then, of course, the provider and the product. Investment security is the company so small, for example, that we doubt that it will exist 5 years from now, or has it a successful track record and positive trajectory? How confident are we that we will do a successful project together? And how much experience do they bring to the table from comparable projects? And lastly, the implementation risk. So once we sign the contract to be embark on an implementation project, how confident are we that we successfully arrive at the end of the rainbow? How feasible is the project given our resources, the resources of the software provider? How much do we rely on documentations, everything documented that we need, for example, APIs and processes and security functionalities and security requirements. Yes. And this is all we can, these criteria are so concrete that we can evaluate them in a reasonable way. That's how I would do it. Categories, you have criteria, but this is only ex ante. This is at the point when we decide to product pricing software. Then you have implementation going on. And I know that you, Fabian, did a lot of implementation projects. Looking back in hindsight, what of these criteria have the highest predictive power on a successful project?
I think that's a good point. I mean, we are dealing with RFPs, and many of these criteria we've seen and we've been answering, we are working with, we are offering these features and can succeed on these criteria. But in the end, you not only buy a software, you buy the team behind the software, which brings, let's say, a broad experience across multiple implementations and retailers and categories on the one hand, but also has the capability to also innovate in the future. And therefore, you're not only buying a tool at the status quo, but you're also buying the capability to evolve the tool in the future. And most important for the implementation then is also the team that is running the implementation on all ends, so to say, and that they're working hand in hand and are able to in an agile manner adjust the software if needed, if requirements change. Despite a thorough assessment of all criteria and use cases, there's always smaller details that are being adjusted throughout the implementation. That's also an important thing, that the provider is able to cater that. And in the end, it's human beings working together. So the collaboration, our view, is probably, after all, the most important predictor of the success. If the team is working together in a constructive manner, the result is going to be great. If it's working against each other, proving one is better than the other, or proving the software cannot fulfill our requirements, it's designed to fail.
Yeah, I can totally relate. You're not only investing in software, you're investing in a relationship. And I think that's really important for the time after, even after the implementation. So
that's true. But before the implementation, when you not yet know your relationship partner, so to say, to marry, how do you get information about all these criteria?
You need to create points where you see where you can make a conclusion about the character of the people. For example, during the RFI process, how much interaction do you have? What kind of counter questions do you get, or question for clarification? How tailored are the live workshops? Is it customized to you? How much effort do you see your counterpart is investing in you without knowing that they will make the contract, and actually knowing that there are 2, 3, or 5 other companies in the run? Of course, you could also create some artificial time pressure and see how they work, but that's I think that's not 100% ethical, so I won't do it. But to be very sensitive to the moments where interaction happens, and to rely a bit also on your gut feeling, how is your counterpart also reacting to you? And then to make this more sensitive, you need to evaluate ex ante. How do you want to evaluate those the teams? And talking about what makes a good collaboration partner makes you already sensitive about this. And this is what I see that most companies don't do. Consciously decide what would be the ideal partner. They're looking at requirement lists and so on, but they don't take the time to think consciously about what makes a good partner. And I think already defining this criterion makes you more attuned to your partner.
More sensitive and more aware.
Yes.
I guess the other categories are much easier to assess and get information, but also for those, I assume you have a structured, as I know you, procedure how to do that, and sources of information, right, that you can leverage.
Yes, that's how I would do it. I would always start in a pyramid order, like start with the categories. We have the criteria, and then, so that nobody is surprised at the end that we don't have the information, define before you start the evaluation process, where do you get the information to evaluate the criteria? And this is also how I would recommend doing it, to link each criterion to a source of information where you get it from. And once you have all the information for all the criteria, you then need to decide, okay, I have the information, but how do I evaluate this information? And of course, you have qualitative information. In this case, you need to evaluate qualitative information in a quantitative, as objective as possible way. And here I would suggest defining evaluation matrices before the evaluation happens. So what means 3 points, 2 points, 1 point? What do we need to see here? And second, you also have quantitative models. How do we model, for example, total cost of ownership? Or how do we evaluate technical criteria? What is compensatory? So if it's the performance is low here, but better here, does it offset each other or not? My experience is that in most cases you have must-have criteria, or so to say, knockout criteria. Either it has the capability to be integrated in your system or not. Yes, this is how I would do it. Categories, criteria, and then the evaluation. And then you put everything together. And the question is, how does it look like? And for this case, I brought an exemplary summary with me for 3 different tools. The data are just for the purpose of illustration. And here you can decide either you bring everything to the same currency or denominator, like you bring everything into points, and then you even weight these points, and then each tool gets a single number, and then you take the tool with the highest number. My experience is this is too subjective because the weights are already subjective, and the way you move from quantitative data to qualitative points in this case, or points are quantitative, but it's subjective how you define what gives 3 points when you look into implementation cost. My experience is that you take the evaluation for each criteria one by one, and then you discuss in a steering committee, or actually before that, how do you weight it, for example. And surprisingly, in all of my projects, there was a clear winner. Although you could assume, okay, this is functionally better, but costs more, and that's why maybe there had 2 winners, but usually you don't have them. And this is how I would do it. Each criterion, show the evaluation, and everything actually fits on one slide. And then you make the case.
Thanks a lot. I think that's super valuable. I think especially this comprehensive overview. And of course, I understand that you sanitize the slide and remove Quicklizard from number 1 to keep it neutral for this purpose. No, but I think this was super helpful. Markus, thanks so much for your time. And I wish you good luck with the upcoming and ongoing consulting of further retail clients and process tool selection processes.
Thank you so much for having me, and for this interesting conversation.